hunted man is cornered in the heart of enemy territory. His face is recognized. Death looks certain. What does he do? Well, he doesn't fight. Instead, he pretends to be insane, scratching at doors, letting spit run down his beard. I know it sounds absurd, but that's precisely what David did in 1 Samuel 21. And that humiliating, desperate moment became the backdrop for one of the most beautiful psalms ever written, Psalm 34. A song of deliverance that reminds us even when we're in the depths of despair, God is still near. Welcome to the Ben Min Popscast. I'm Dr. Bob Martin, or Pops. Today we're exploring Psalm 34, a psalm born out of fear, failure, humiliation, and desperation, yet ending in overflowing gratitude and praise to God. So if you've ever felt cornered by frightening or overwhelming circumstances, David's story shows us that God won't abandon you in those moments. He meets you where you are. Now, before he became Israel's king, David was hunted like a criminal by King Saul. Desperate, he fled to the city of Gath, the hometown of Goliath. Yep, the giant he had killed years earlier, but the Philistines recognized him immediately. And 1 Samuel 21:12 tells us David was very much afraid. Fear can make us do strange things. Sometimes in our panic, we run towards wrong choices, hoping for protection. But David's plan backfired spectacularly. He found himself trapped, terrified, and humiliated. And yet, that's where God showed up. With no other option, David pretended to be insane. And when King Achish saw this lunatic, he kicked him out of his presence. And just like that, David escaped. It wasn't heroic, it wasn't dignified, but it was God's mercy. After this experience, David wrote Psalm 34. And in verse 4, he writes, I sought the Lord, and he answered me and delivered me from all my fears. He didn't brag about his cleverness or courage. Instead, he praises God's deliverance. David realized something crucial. Safety doesn't come from control, power, or reputation. It comes from taking refuge in God himself. And that's why he invites us in verse 8 to taste and see that the Lord is good. Blessed is the man who takes refuge in him. David learned that even in shame and fear, God's goodness was not far away. The Lord met him right in the middle of the mess that he created. In his book, Happiness, Randy Alcorn writes, the Christian life is a feast, not a famine. It's tasting and seeing that the Lord is good. Now, Psalm 34:18 says, the Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit. God doesn't stand far off when we're broken. He draws close if we trust him. David had felt both broken and crushed, yet that pain became the place where he encountered God's compassion. Now, we tend to think that God shows up once we've cleaned ourselves up, when we feel strong in our faith, and when we've stopped doubting. But David's story says the exact opposite. It was when he was most afraid, humiliated, and exhausted that God's nearness was at its strongest, steadiest, and sustaining. When JONI TADA was just 17, she was paralyzed from the shoulders down in a diving accident, and overnight, her entire world collapsed. In the hospital, she wrestled with deep despair and anger. She begged God to heal her, but he didn't. Well, at least not the way she expected. Instead, God met her in her suffering. JONI later said, God's purpose in my suffering was not to make me independent, but dependent on him. Over time, that dependence became her strength. JONI's pain was transformed into a worldwide ministry for people with disabilities. Her radiant joy and deep faith reflects Psalm 34. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted. In her book, A Place of Healing, she wrote, sometimes God's blessings are not in what he gives, but in what he takes away. Now, maybe you've lost something that you thought you just couldn't live without, or life hasn't turned out the way you'd hoped. Psalm 34 reminds us that our feelings aren't always a good measure of God's presence. And that's precisely what David experienced. God didn't remove his fear instantly, but he walked with him through it. So when you feel crushed, God doesn't wait for you to climb out of the pit. He steps down into it beside you. Alistair Begg, in his Brave by Faith, wrote, "The presence of God is the answer to every fear, the cure for every loneliness, and the end of every doubt." So this week, just take 10 minutes every morning and read Psalm 34, praying the words out loud. Let David's words become your words. And as you do, be honest with God. David didn't hide his fear or shame. He poured it out before the Lord, and you can too. Next, take refuge in God's presence. Psalm 34:7 promises, "The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him and delivers them." Real peace isn't the absence of trouble, it's the presence of God in the middle of it. By drawing closer to him, you can taste and see his goodness for yourself. Well, thank you for joining me for this episode of the Ben Min Popscast. If today's message encouraged you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear the message. To explore more of our resources, visit benmin.org and follow us on social media. Until next time, God bless you.